Hi there, I'm Kim Coco. Today's 90-minute yin class is going to be for those of you that walk a lot or run a lot. If you're like me, I take my dog for hikes or long walks throughout the day to help her get out some of that puppy energy still. And I get home and I notice that my hips are tight, my hamstrings feel tight, and oftentimes my quadriceps feel a little fatigued from hiking up boulders and coming back down. So whether you extremely hike into crazy atmospheres with your pets or you just walk a lot or you're on your feet a lot or you run a lot, this class will be beneficial for you. That being said, we're going to start by putting our legs up the wall to start to reverse that blood flow. You know, obviously when we're moving in that frontal plane, blood's having to work its way up from the feet back to the heart, so we're going to give that pump a break by inverting slightly. So that being said, you might want to grab a blanket to place underneath your hips. You might want a block and a bolster for later, but it's all optional. So if you have carpet and obviously you're in a space that's more cushioned, then you might not want a blanket underneath your hips. But from here, we're going to scoot your tush close to the wall. Just maybe do that left hip close to the wall. Start to gracefully as you can roll onto your back. If you have tighter hamstrings, your hips will be further away from the wall. If you have more flexible hamstrings already, you can scoot your rear end closer to the wall. And then you can take a few moments to maybe point and flex your feet in a more of a regular Viparita Karani position. But if you feel so inclined, we're going to take a nice Supta Upavishta Konasana, or a reclining straddle pose on the wall here. So again, you can point and flex the feet and feel the femurs energetically reaching out away from the hips. And then you can feel the spine also moving energetically away from the hips. So that might mean feeling your hips move towards the wall, but scooting the spine, the shoulder blades a little bit further away from the wall, even if the shoulder blades move down the back. And then you have a couple different arm positions. You can have your arms rest by the side. You can take your arms out at shoulder height, palms up or down. If your arms are out at shoulder height, maybe you bend the elbows a little bit or a lot, maybe closer to 90 degrees if you can feel your elbows and your forearms resting comfortably on the floor. We're going to go ahead and allow gravity to start doing its work here as the hips start to melt heavier towards your blanket or the floor. You notice where your low back is lightly away from the floor, and then where it meets the ground again. We're going to be here for about 10 minutes, so we're going to use this as our time to center, to transition from whatever went on in your day up until this point, and really as a way to induce the relaxation response for the body, allowing gravity to pull the blood from the legs back to the heart for recirculation, reoxygenation. And knowing that the wisdom of the body, the intelligence of the body, will start to kick in without you having to play a part. It knows exactly what to do. Just by taking your shape, you help support that process. And the only thing you have to do while you're here is breathe. You might even start your time here by inhaling deeply, taking a light pause at the top of that breath, exhaling deliberately, pausing at the bottom of that breath to make room for the inhale again, staying with all 4 parts of your breath. Whether you're engaging the pause at the top, but still allowing the body to be heavy, or you might even inhale and take a very brief, conscious pause at the top. before you exhale, taking that slightest pause at the bottom. So you get to control how much you hold in between inhales and exhales. However, the whole goal here is to find some stillness with the body, a sense of connection to your breath, and the ability to transition to this moment through the power of your breath. So take a few moments here to notice what you're working with today without judgment. You stay in this place of an observer. Be aware of what new sensations arise as your body begins to settle deeper into the pose as time progresses. Notice the quality of your thoughts. And notice your ability to be in a broader perspective so that you don't necessarily have to fidget and move just because you have an inkling in the body, and you don't have to go run and take action just because you have an impulse in the mind. Your only job here is to relax into this place of lowered resistance, connecting with that internal sense of ease. Using this physical stillness as a way to enhance mental clarity and focus. And that might mean staying connected to the breath, staying aware of the body, without having to do anything. And as you're here, each minute longer, notice where there's a sense of softening. Can the body let go at all? Can the back get heavier on the floor? Can the back side of the arms rest more deeply? And notice any new spaciousness around the hips or in the legs. And can you find the hint of a smile here appreciating from this very beginning part of your practice the fact that you can practice, that you're setting this time aside for you to nurture and strengthen yourself on so many levels. Come back to the rhythm of your breath when your mind wanders. Take a deeper breath here. You can take your hands to your legs and slowly help them back up towards a bent knee position if you want to take almost like a happy baby at the wall or a little squat. Or you can take both feet up to more of a Viparita Karani for a moment and just notice the effects of being in that position for 10 minutes on the body. And then you have a choice on what you want to do for your outer hip stretch, which we'll take next. The first option being bending the knees, placing the soles of the feet on the wall, and slowly walking your torso back in space so that your knees come over your hips. And keeping the tailbone lightly tucked, shins parallel to the floor, knees over the hips. That's going to be your easiest version. If you notice we get into this and you want to go deeper, you can always walk your rear end closer to the wall again. Or you can take pigeon if you want to take a pigeon pose, and that's a regular part of your practice. By all means, you can do that. Otherwise, from here, we're going to go ahead and cross your right ankle just past your left thigh. And like you take a figure 4 shape in a regular yoga practice, the tendency here is to want to sway that left hip out, keep that left hip underneath the left knee, and then that right foot just lightly flexed at first to protect the right knee. And then, like I said, it's going to be easier if your knee is over your hip directly. You can scoot your rear end closer to the wall if you want to make it more challenging. You could scoot your rear end further away from the wall to make it easier. And then you could take this block and you could place it under your elbow or between your hand and the right knee if you want to lightly help that right knee move out to the side to get a little bit of a stretch. And we're going to be here for about 5 minutes each side. So if you're getting into your pigeon pose, you might take your time to get there and settle in and fold. But if you're here in your reclined figure 4 shape at the wall, you can take your left arm out to the side. You might even bend that left elbow and place the left forearm underneath the head to get an additional shoulder stretch. But notice here, we're just starting to open up this right hip. the goal is to relax that right hand as much as possible. Feeling both hips moving toward the wall. If you're at the wall, with both sides of the torso long. And again, that right arm can be used as a kickstand to hold that right knee up in space and just lightly encourage it toward the wall. But we don't want to use any additional pressure or tension in that right shoulder or right arm to help that happen. You really just want to use the leverage of bone on bone to help to open up the hips. And so there's this theme I've been playing with a lot in my life recently to help soothe myself into a sense of internal alignment. And it's finding the path of least resistance. So I know that every time I walk my dog up in the park, we have Bidwell Park here in Chico, California, which is just this giant space. We have a lower park with pathways along a creek, and then it moves into this upper park with buttes and lava rock, and it goes up in the hills quite a ways at the base of the Sierra Nevada mountains. And so I often take my dog up there, and I find it amazing because there are lots of trails that you can take. And as I'm finding a trail for the day, I unconsciously, most of the time, choose the path of least resistance. As I'm on a trail, I navigate through the rocks. I find a line that's going to support my knees and my feet and give me the best balance as I move. And I step with a sense of deliberateness. And there are different parts of the trail that have more boulders, there are parts of the trails that are smoother, and I move from part to part, trying to find the easiest way up and the easiest way down, or the easiest way across the fields as possible, avoiding the mud and the parts where my dog wants to go chase the cows. And mind you, she's a little 30-pound black and white dog, and the cows don't want to play with her. But that being said, when I'm navigating my trail, I always want to find what's going to be the best path for me. And it's a step-by-step process. And I'm noticing that in my life, I'm doing that as well, choice by choice by choice. So as you breathe here in this side of the pose, with your right knee bent, whether you're in pigeon or in your figure four at the wall, how can you use your breath to soften into the pose? How can you let the back side of your body still get heavy on the floor? How can you use the breath to feel the skin on the outer right hip broaden? And yin is just a really nice way to ease the resistance in the body because we're only going 50 to 70%. So the body doesn't go into protection. It really can relax and open and create new space without really much effort at all. Quietly as you can, take another inhale on this side. Use your way to unwind slowly. Maybe reach that right leg up in space. Maybe hug the knee in towards the chest if that's going to feel good. Maybe take a half happy baby for a breath. If you're in pigeon, you're going to make your way up. Maybe flip your dog. Take down dog. Maybe shake the leg out. Otherwise, we're going to go right to the second side. So you're at the wall still, feet hip distance apart, shins parallel, knees over the hips. Go ahead and take your left knee, bend it, cross the left ankle just past the right thigh. And notice this side might already be really different. Feel that right hip in line or hugging in just slightly towards the midline. Feel the left knee press towards the wall. Using the hand as a kickstand, and again, just being aware of what's already going on this second side. Lightly flexing the left foot to keep a sense of safety around that left knee joint. Maybe take that right arm out to the side or right forearm back behind your head for a pillow. And just notice here what you've got going on in this left hip. And how is somewhere else in the body maybe trying to help create space? Can you soften? And in this playing with finding the path of least resistance, it's going also with the least resistance in the thoughts. So how many times a day we've got so many millions of thoughts actually going through our head. And some of the thoughts make us feel better. And some of the thoughts create a sense of internal stress. Like on Monday, I've got so many things I've got to accomplish today. That's one way of looking at it. Another thought would be, I've got a lot to do, but I don't have to do it all right now. It feels a little easier. I feel overwhelmed with the things on my plate. I'm capable of accomplishing my tasks, and I can face them head on one at a time. It's almost like soothing yourself mentally and emotionally with every thought that comes into the brain. My hips feel really tight. I'm glad I'm taking the time to create the space in my hips right now. Notice as you are here, still focusing on the breath, be aware of the content of your thoughts as well. And if you find a thought that doesn't feel like the best version of your thought, and it creates a sense of internal stress or inner turmoil, can you find a thought of least resistance? A thought that just creates a little more ease. Using your time here to rest in. Instead of I have to strain to make a change possible in my body, these changes come effortlessly and easily. These changes have to come right now. My body makes the changes in perfect timing. I'd like a big shift to happen in my hips or in my body. I'm honoring myself by taking time to make smaller shifts that lay the foundation for the bigger ones. How can you settle in here with your breath these last 3 rounds? Finishing your next cycle of breath with the exhale. Stretching that left leg up or taking it to half happy baby. Coming from pigeon, maybe take a down dog. If you're on your back, maybe take a happy baby. Maybe stretch both legs out. Maybe just hug your knees in and rock a little side to side. Maybe roll out the ankles. And if you're on your back, go ahead and roll over to one side so you can make your way to a seat. If you're from down dog, go ahead and make your way to a seat for just a moment. And actually, we're going to take dangling pose next, which is Uttanasana essentially. So we're going to take a standing forward fold for about 3 minutes just to keep this inversion happening, draining the blood from the feet back to the heart, and then from the heart down to the head to kind of clear the mind. So take the feet hip distance apart. You can bend the knees generously if you have tighter hamstrings, obviously. It's also going to work into the whole backside fascia, the tissue in the body. So you can bend your knees a lot or a little. You can reach for opposite elbows if that feels good. But ideally here, we're going to create a way for you to soften the mind. You might even bend one knee at a time and start to straighten up the hamstrings. Just finding a little bit of movement at first before you settle in. Maybe it's even moving the torso a little bit side to side. And then when you get to a sense of evenness in the torso, find a sense of stability at the base of your feet, pressing down equally at the base of the big toe and the pinky toe, feeling the inner and outer edge of the heel grounded. But lift through the inner arches of the feet so you feel that inseam of your whole thigh, calves and thigh, reaching up towards the sitting bones as they lift and spread. Maybe even lift and lengthen your torso out away from your pelvis, almost like you take an Ardha Uttanasana for a breath, and then maybe fold back in. Again, knees bent or moving towards straight. And then feel the shoulder blades moving back away from the ears. But let the head hang heavy. Let any unwanted or unnecessary worrisome thoughts, negative thoughts, resistant thoughts, imagine them just dripping out the crown of your head to your mat. And coming back to your breath. And maybe for this last minute here, you can feel your weight rock just slightly forward more towards the ball mound of each foot, without wrinkling up your toes. Finding anywhere else to soften. Take your next inhale here, fill up slowly. Complete your exhale all the way back out. And then bend your knees more generously. And you have a couple different options. You can roll yourself up one vertebrae at a time, coming to stand, or you can start to bend your knees, sit your hips down, and come to a seat. So whether you're standing or you're seated for a moment, just pause and just feel your head back upright. You might see little stars. Just notice the mental clarity for a few moments. And then make your way to a seat if you're not already there. This is where your blanket might come in handy. You might actually want to have your blanket behind you to lift the hips slightly and move the flesh from the sitting bones. If you want to, we're going to take a half shoelace first. So what we're going to do is we're going to keep that left leg extended. We're going to take that right knee in towards the chest, and we're going to cross that right knee directly over the left knee, so that the right foot is going to come in close to the hip, and the right knee will just stack closer to the left. If your foot is on the floor and this is as close as you can get to half shoelace, this could be your pose and you can stay right here. Otherwise, we'll take half shoelace, kind of like half Gomukhasana. And ideally, you want to feel both sitting bones level. So we're going to inhale and lengthen the spine. You can actually take your hands back behind you and lift up through the low back and lift the heart. And if you can let go and still stay upright, you might stay here and just let the head and neck rest, or you can slowly start to hinge and fold and take your half shoelace variation. Now, depending on where you're tight, you might feel this more in that lateral hamstring towards the IT band. You might feel it more in the hip. But we're going to spend about 5 minutes here. And again, if you're a walker or a runner on a regular basis, this area can get really tight. So hang out. Find as much ease as you can. As we encounter these different situations in our yoga practice and in life, we do encounter challenges. And those challenges really give us the opportunity to add clarity to what we want for our future. If you find something you don't like, you're instinctively reassessing that situation and firing off ideas of what you'd like better. And what's cool is that these challenges give us that clarity. They help us build some strength and some compassion. But I think the most important point is we will always encounter some challenges. And the difference in how we respond to them is whether or not we create more resistance in our life or we actually grow and evolve out of those circumstances. So for example, you might have some residual tension in the body, which might create a challenge for you in, let's say, half shoelace. And you have the opportunity now to say, okay, look at these sensations I'm feeling, and it's challenging to be here. But I can also look at that and say, I'm proud of myself for being here in this moment, taking time to create more space in my body. I notice imbalance, but I'm taking the time to create balance. I appreciate my body knowing what to do to create that balance, and I honor myself in this moment. So kind of soothing yourself into the pose. Now granted, you might choose to ignore the sensation and try to push and, get yourself in deeper. And oftentimes that's just increasing the resistance that's already there. It's like looking at a problem over and over and over again, and you never find a solution because you're only looking at the problem. So can you be part of the solution here? Can you be part of the ease? Can you be part of the growth that happens as a result of being here in your practice? And then just use your breath as a way to stay focused, as a way to connect. as a way to be aware of what's going on in the body and in the mind without attaching to it, so that in this broader perspective we can align with the solution, with the next evolution of ourselves, the next best version of ourselves. Let the head and neck drape, even though the collarbones might stay broad, and the shoulder blades down the back. Maybe if your forehead's close enough to your knee, you rest it on your knee, or you use the block between your knee and your forehead to let your head hang heavy. Use your next inhale to come slowly back up. I have a couple different options for the second half of this pose. You're welcome to stay in your half shoelace, or you can come to full shoelace, which is like Gomukhasana in regular yoga terminology. And that might mean bending that left knee so that right knee is still stacked up on top of the left. And if your right knee comes up a lot higher than your left knee, I recommend going back to half shoelace. You're going to feel that right hip drop down in space. So there's a sense of levelness in the hips. Getting into the piriformis. Again, if those of you who walk or run a lot, this can be a tight area. And we're going to stay here for the next 5 minutes. So your option is to stay, half shoelace, full shoelace. You can stay with your torso more upright, getting length as the hips and the sitting bones rest down towards the floor. You can lengthen up through the sides of the ribs and actually breathe through the diaphragm, using it like an umbrella to open and create space along the ribs and the lungs. And you're welcome to fold forward if that's going to be easier for you as well. But find a place where you can rest. Notice if your thoughts have shifted as a result of your body posture. And can you soothe yourself into a place of less resistance? Knowing that you're right where you need to be. All things are unfolding in perfect timing. There's nothing else you need to do or be right now. You have the power within you to create worlds. And just by being in this stillness, you're able to tap into that sense of empowerment to create the life that you want. and that you are supported by many, seen and unseen, that help your path unfold most beautifully for you. And all you have to do right now is enjoy the luxury of your breath. Finding all 4 parts of your breath. Simply slowing down the inhales and the exhales to match each other. Maybe return back to that hint of an inward smile as you appreciate the unfolding of your body, stillness in your mind, time to practice, the ability to be present. Use your next inhale to come back up if you're folded forward. Slowly uncross your legs, maybe lean back, maybe windshield wiper the knees by taking the feet a little bit wider than hip distance apart and slowly taking the knees side to side. That feels good. And then we're going to go right to the second side. So wiggle yourself out as you need to. Maybe it's just shaking out the legs. Sitting yourself up on your blanket if you need to. Pause for a moment in Dandasana. This time the right leg's going to stay extended. The left knee's going to hug in. Cross the left foot over the right leg or slowly drop that left knee over the right. Taking that left hip by your right foot. Kind of like this human pretzel, right, left, right. See if you can square your torso out over your extended leg and sit tall for a moment first. Find the balance of the sitting bones on the floor. And then stay here with your torso more upright or slowly walk your way forward. And then take these first few rounds of breath here to really just check in with your anatomy. Can you feel your sitting bones level? Notice any differences between this side and the last without having to really adjust right away, but just with this fine-tuning sense of awareness. One side might feel significantly different than the other. And one of the biggest phrases I've been reminded of lately is I have lots of transitions going on in my life, business-wise, relationship-wise. And I'm the kind of person that likes to have big changes happen quickly. But oftentimes, big changes can create more internal stress. So as much as I want big changes, sometimes it's those smaller changes step by step that really help us stay balanced through these transitional times. So what small changes can you make in your perspective here? And half shoelace on the second side. What small changes might you make with your body to find a sense of balance, whether that's easing out of a pose or finding a little more depth? How might you be okay with smaller changes in your daily life to help create the foundation for the bigger changes as you move forward? Still feel the length of your spine lifting out of your hips as you fold, if you're folding. Maybe finding a way to support your head wherever you are. And again, this side might be very different, so find a way to honor that. Allow the space between the shoulders and the ears to remain as the shoulder blades drop down the back, wherever you are. Maybe a sense of broadness across the front of the heart, even though the head and neck is relaxed. Breathing more vibrantly if you find your mental thoughts distracted. Use your next inhale to slowly unwind. And again, you have the option to stay in half shoelace. Maybe that means coming out for a breath or two, re-lengthening your spine, folding forward if you so choose again. Or you can stack the left knee on top of the right for a more balanced version. Well, it's not even a more balanced version, it's just slightly different, maybe more intense version in your shoelace. So half shoelace, full shoelace, feet closer to the hips to make it easier, a little bit further out to make it more challenging. Noticing already a difference right to left. Letting a nice deep breath in and out come out through your nose, maybe even exhale through the mouth. It's kind of fun using a timer because it keeps you true and honest. And sometimes 5 minutes goes by slow. And sometimes the time can just fly by. But wherever you are, feel the spine get taller. You're welcome to stay more upright or hinge over your half shoelace or in your full shoelace. But find the path of least resistance in the body. By finding a pose that's about half the intensity that you would normally take in a yang-based practice, where you find that edge and you stay there. Find the path of least resistance when you come up to thoughts that maybe take you on a tangent you don't really want to travel down or follow. Can you soothe your internal dialogue by finding thoughts of least resistance? And when all else fails, come back to your breath. Unhinging that lower jaw just a tad so that there's no additional tension in the neck or the throat. Allowing the tongue to rest at the bottom of your mouth. Maybe even keeping that light inner smile as you breathe into the second side, second half of the second side. Just as you do when you're walking or you're running, stepping one foot in front of the other, moving one breath at a time. Creating a rhythm in which the mind can settle. And although our body's physically still here, finding internal rhythm that supports you. An inner self-determination to create this balance, but knowing that it's often easier than you think, happens with far less effort than we think. Stay for your next inhale. Complete your exhale. And then slowly unwind from wherever you're at. Again, you can windshield wiper the legs. You can just uncross the feet, shake them out, help them out as you need to. Maybe that's placing the feet mat distance apart and just windshield wipering the knees. It's like that nice clearing out so that you can see through your windshield when you're in your car, and allowing the hips to find a sense of balance and create some clarity there. Our next pose is caterpillar. Said another way, Paschimottanasana. So take your feet out in front of you, hip distance apart or big toes touching, but lightly activate the back of your legs and press them into the floor. This is where you might want your bolster if you are not folding forward all the way to your legs. It's nice to have something in front of you. So sit tall for a moment, almost like you would in Dandasana. Lengthen up through the side of the body. And then from here, maybe, if you can let go and still stay upright, you can fold forward. You're also welcome to stay more upright and just tuck the chin. Or slowly start to keep that spine long. And maybe use your bolster for some supports. Maybe find a blanket or a pillow for underneath your head. And again, we'll be here for about 7 minutes or so. So feel the sitting bones just lightly spread. Maybe rock your pelvis forward. Let your head and neck be heavy. Let your arms be relaxed, whether they're folded on top of your bolster or by your side. And remember, this doesn't have to be the deepest expression of what you're capable of here in your caterpillar. Our goal is simply to open up the back fascia, just like we did in our dangling earlier, from the hamstrings all the way up the low back, mid back, upper back, back of the head. See if there's any way you can try less here, less with force, allowing a sense of ease to help create depth and space in the body. How can you tap into the rhythm of ease here? starting to build a sensitivity to this effortlessness. And maybe that means backing out a little, or maybe it means dropping in a little further. Can you still feel your belly button lifting out away from the pelvis, the spine lifting away from the pelvis, even though there's a sense of heaviness in the back of the legs and the back of the spine, as the torso folds a lot or a little. See if you can find a way to be still for this last portion of this pose. Really only 3 slow rounds of breath. We've got a 5 count inhale and a 5 count exhale. Fourth inhale to slowly unwind, set your props aside. We'll take a counter pose with tabletop or inverted tabletop. So bend the knees, place the feet hip distance apart. Take the hands back behind you, spread the collarbones, lift the heart, fingers point towards the front of your mat, and you can lift the heart and stay here and just take a nice counter pose, lengthening the spine. If you want to go further still, begin to lift the hips and engage the torso as you lengthen from the knees out through the crown of the head. You can keep the chin lightly tucked or look up, whatever feels better to you, but soften the glutes. Just re-lengthen the front of the body. And exhale, slowly release the hips to the floor. The next pose you might want your bolster for. You might even want to block for. We're going to take a saddle pose. So you can stack up your blanket on top of your bolster. You can take your feet underneath your hips and take your knees wide on your mat. And we're just going to get a nice quad stretch. After our forward fold and lengthening the back side of the body, we're just going to open up the front side of the body here. So we'll lift the hips, tuck the tailbone, and lengthen across the back side of the body, and then come down onto your props. If you get here and you already feel an intenseness in the low back or across the front of the thighs, stack up props underneath your bolster. Place more pillows, so you end up being more at an angle. If it's too tight on the knees, you can always place a blanket behind the knees to give you a little more space behind the kneecaps. If all that is out of the question, then by all means just take your legs out for Shavasana, but support your upper body to open the heart. And then we'll be here for about 7 minutes as well. So going from a forward fold to a gentle back bend. And this is especially great for those of you who are on your feet and walking and running a lot, because we're opening up the quadriceps, the hip flexors, and the rectus femoris, which actually crosses at the hip joint and the knee joint. So by bending the knees under, we're getting a stretch there as well. Just notice as you're 2/3 of the way through your practice, what's different? Has this time on your mat thus far created more ease within you, physically, mentally? What little shifts have you noticed? And then how can you here take this sense of internal ease and balance and combine it with an open heart, taking it into the perspective you have about yourself with love and compassion, how you open yourself up and express yourself in your relationships, in your career, and how you approach your hobbies and your interactions on a broader scale. And can there be even a sense of ease here, an effortlessness and a confidence in being who you are, knowing that your path, your perfect path, is unfolding moment by moment. Adjust if you need to, knowing that you've been here for a few minutes. If you feel comfortable, settle in maybe a little bit deeper. Feel your back supported by the props beneath you. A sense of heaviness of your shins connected to the ground if your knees are still bent. The backs of the legs connected to the floor if your legs are extended. And as you stay for this last minute or so here, from this place of inner soothing and inner ease, what new thoughts arise? What creativity might be inspired? What inner messages can you hear about how to approach a new situation in your life? Or what solution might come to mind that you might not have seen before you created this space? Take about 3 more rounds of breath. Making your way up to sit on your heels or just come to a seated position for a moment when you're done. Finding a neutral spine for a breath or two. And then from here, we're going to go ahead and take that length in the front side of the spine and the back of the spine, as well as the openness and the inner and outer hips that we've done so far in class, and we're going to take deer pose, so that actually internally and externally rotates the legs, one on each side. So go ahead and turn to face the side of your mat, and we're going to take and bend the right knee, so the right shin places, or it's parallel to the long edge of your mat, and then we'll bend the left knee, and so we'll have that left shin parallel to the back edge of the mat. So you have kind of like, it's almost like a swastikasana, is a bend at the front and back knee. And then we're going to take this into a twist. So you actually have an external rotation of your right leg and an internal rotation of the left. And then from here, we're going to turn and lengthen and face the front of your mat. And then we're going to take this length and we're going to slowly hinge and fold. And this is where you might want your bolster again. If the bolster feels far away, grab some blankets, stack up blankets, pillows, and then we're going to turn and lean over that prop. You can turn your head to the left, you can turn your head to the right, you can support your head so that your neck is neutral. And then we're going to breathe here. Finding a depth in this pose that's going to work for you. So you may or may not need the extra layers. Feel that right hip tuck under slightly, away from the bolster. And let the head and neck relax. Your arms can hug the bolster. They can rest by the side. If your torso is flat on the mat, you might even thread the needle with that left arm behind the right. That would be extremely intense. So if you have that flexibility and that pose is only 50% or 70% for you, then by all means take that. Otherwise, take a more subdued version of deer pose, taking the length in our spine into a twist. To help bring out any residual tension, any hidden mental confusion, or just tightness in the body. about halfway through, maybe you stay, maybe you lift your torso back away from your bolster, and then re-lengthen your spine to fold again. Or if you're comfortable in your stillness, by all means stay. But find a way that you can ease in a little more deeply, even if that's just through the depth of your breath. Can you even have a softness in your arms, in your torso, in your fingers, in your face? We'll take about 3 more slow rounds of breath here. Use your next inhale to slowly push up to a seat. You can turn around and face the back of your mat. Maybe windshield wiper the legs once or twice before you go right to the second side. This time, you're going to face that left side of your mat. Right shin goes parallel to the back of your mat, so that leg's inner spiraling. Externally rotating that left knee so it faces the long edge of your mat. Tuck that left hip under, and then use the length from that left hip. Take one hand to each side of your bolster that's still facing the front of your mat, and then lengthen as you hinge and fold forward, turning your head to either side. We're going to find those nice even rounds of breath again. Settling in as best you can, as quickly as you can, to your breath. And where can you appreciate this ease in the body and effortlessness in the space of the mind, or even the parts of your life that are already flowing smoothly, to which there is a sense of ease and enjoyment. And then highlight that through your mind's eye. You lengthen your spine if you need to, or stay. And then luxuriously enjoy the last few rounds of breath on this side. Use your next inhale to press your way back up to your seat. And then we're going to make your way to Shavasana. So you can use that blanket or bolster underneath your knees if you want. And come all the way down onto your back. And take rest. Sink even a bit deeper into the space you've created physically, emotionally, and mentally. attention with a smile by deepening your breath again and gently rolling around your ankles, your toes, and rubbing your thumbs across your fingertips. Maybe stretch yourself long as though you're waking up all over again. For in fact, you are a very different person, cellularly, than you were an hour and a half ago. Take your knees in towards your chest, maybe rock a little side to side. Rock yourself over to one side and press your way back to a seat so that you can sit tall and feel a more upright position, consciously connecting you back to this reality around you. Staying here for some time in meditation, if you so choose, or taking this new perspective on inner stillness, this path of least resistance that is always available to you. And it doesn't necessarily mean a big shift, a big change in your path. It might just be a shift in the way you're perceiving your thoughts. A greater sense of compassion towards yourself and an understanding that all things are working out as they are meant to. And that by taking your time here on your mat, you're raising your vibration, you're shifting internally this magnetic energy that you send out into the world so that you are now different. You put yourself into alignment with your goals and your desires. And it's really in this easy, effortless, receptive mode that those desires unfold into our reality. So thank yourself for your time on your mat here today. And I thank you so much for sharing your practice with me. Namaste.